When you turn on the evening news in America, what do they usually show you about the Sahel region? They show you dust, despair, and the terrifying sirens of endless conflict. But if you pierce through that thick cloud of red sand, you will hear a completely different sound today. You will hear the deep, rhythmic roar of heavy machinery, the grinding of stone, and the undeniable heartbeat of a nation rising from the ashes. Hello to all my brothers, sisters, and friends of Africa across the globe. I send you my warmest greetings and prayers for your health, your families, and your strength. As a proud child of this magnificent continent, I stand here today to call for our unity and to share a story of sheer resilience that typical African news broadcasts often ignore. To the hard-working men watching this, the fathers and grandfathers who know the true value of building a legacy with calloused hands, I know you will deeply understand the gravity of what is happening in our homeland, right now, in the heart of West Africa. A quiet but fierce revolution is taking place in Burkina Faso. It is not a revolution of empty political slogans drafted in foreign capitals. It is a revolution of cement, sand, and sweat. At the center of this monumental shift is Captain Ibrahim Traoré. He is not just a military leader defending his borders. He has become the chief architect of a nation's survival. For decades, our people were told we were too poor to build. We were forced to rely on expensive, imported materials from the very nations that once exploited us. It was a modern form of economic chains, designed to keep us dependent and weak. But Traoré is shattering those chains. He is turning the entire country into a massive construction site, laying down the physical foundations of national security and true independence. If you are someone who believes that a country is only truly free when its own people can harvest their own resources to build their own homes, I invite you to leave a comment of support. Hit that like button and walk with me through this video. We are witnessing the birth of a sovereign fortress. But behind these massive clouds of cement dust lies a highly dangerous geopolitical chess game. Will this bold strategy of self-reliance ultimately save Burkina Faso? Or will Traoré's defiance put his people directly in the crosshairs of furious foreign empires desperate to keep their control? Let us find out. For generations, the people of Burkina Faso faced a heartbreaking reality that was rarely discussed in the global media. We had the vast, rich land. We had the strong, capable arms of our young men willing to work from dawn until dusk. Yet, we could not build. You might ask why a nation so rich in spirit could not raise its own cities. The answer lies in a deeply flawed system inherited from the past. The very building blocks of progress were essentially held hostage by foreign monopolies. Previous regimes, often heavily influenced by outside powers, allowed a system where basic, essential construction materials like cement had to be imported at extortionate prices. Think about that deeply for a moment, especially those of you who have built your own homes or worked in trades. What is a homeland? And what does sovereignty truly mean? If you cannot even afford the cement and the mortar to build a secure shelter for your family on the very soil your ancestors defended, it was a vicious cycle that drained our national wealth, stunted our industrial growth, and left our crucial infrastructure entirely dependent on the whims of foreign donors. They dictated when, where, and how we could develop, effectively keeping us in a state of permanent childhood. But when Captain Ibrahim Traoré assumed leadership, he recognized this invisible, suffocating prison immediately. As a military man, he understood a fundamental truth that many polished politicians completely ignore. He knew that you cannot declare true independence with a microphone and empty promises. You must build it from the ground up, with dirt, stone, and sheer willpower. He implemented a brilliant, highly strategic approach that completely flipped the traditional script of African development. Instead of flying to Europe to beg for loans or announcing grandiose donor-funded megaprojects that would take decades to materialize, he focused entirely on raw materials first. In March of 2025, Traoré executed a masterstroke that shook the foreign import monopolies to their absolute core. He officially inaugurated the massive Sisinob SA cement plant. Let me give you the hard numbers, because numbers do not lie. This single facility immediately began churning out a staggering 2,000 tons of cement every single day. That is approximately 750,000 tons annually, with aggressive, fully funded plans to rapidly expand to 1.2 million tons per year. The cunning brilliance of this move was in the timing. Traoré did not wait for the demand of massive infrastructure projects to overwhelm a weak supply chain. He aggressively secured the supply of cement and mobilized the extraction of local sand long before unleashing his national construction boom. He essentially built the engine before trying to drive the car. By prioritizing absolute self-sufficiency in these foundational materials, he violently slashed the country's reliance on expensive foreign imports. He stabilized local prices, destroyed the old supply monopolies, and created an ecosystem where building was no longer a luxury reserved for the corrupt elite or foreign contractors. He put the tools of creation directly back into the hands of the Burkinabe people. If you appreciate hearing this kind of unfiltered truth about how African nations are rolling up their sleeves and fighting for their own economic independence, make sure you hit that subscribe button to stay updated with the most authentic Africa news, straight from the heart of the continent. By turning simple sand and stone into the new currency of national development, Traoré has fundamentally changed the psychology of our nation. The machines are running day and night. The silos are overflowing with freshly milled cement, and the solid foundation of a completely new era has been poured. But now that Ibrahim Traoré has secured millions of tons of concrete and mobilized an entire workforce, a critical question arises. He is not just pouring concrete for simple houses or standard commercial buildings. What exactly is he planning to construct with this massive new arsenal of industrial power? And what was the shocking next move that suddenly made Western capitals realize they were completely losing their grip on the region? Let us find out. The revelation of what Ibrahim Traoré is truly doing with these mountains of cement and sand is the exact moment this story shifts from a simple economic recovery to a masterclass in national defense. He is not just fueling a real estate boom for wealthy developers. He is pouring concrete to build a literal fortress of sovereignty. For years, the vast, unpaved expanses of the Sahel region were exploited by heavily armed insurgent groups that thrived in the lawless dust, making it impossible for the military to protect rural farmers or secure the borders. Traoré is changing the battlefield by laying down strategic, heavy-duty military roads that allow his forces to mobilize rapidly and crush these terror threats. Furthermore, this newly minted cement is being poured into the foundations of state-owned industrial zones, grain silos to ensure food security, and modern hospitals, so that the sick are no longer forced to wait for the meager charity of Western non-governmental organizations. This is what true national security looks like. It is the realization that you cannot defend a country with imported bullets alone. You must fortify it with infrastructure that you own and control. When you walk the bustling streets, from the vibrant markets of Ouagadougou to the economic hub of Bobo Dioulasso today, the atmosphere is utterly electric. You do not just see construction. You witness a profound psychological resurrection. For decades, the young men of West Africa faced a heartbreaking, agonizing dilemma, stripped of opportunity by corrupt, puppet governments. Their only choices were to either join radical militias out of sheer starvation or risk their lives on deadly, overcrowded boats across the Mediterranean. fleeing to Europe as desperate, unwanted migrants. But today, under the searing African sun, those same young men are standing tall. They are wearing hard hats, gripping shovels, and driving heavy machinery. They are covered in the honorable dust of their own soil, sweating to rebuild their homeland rather than abandoning it. There is a profound dignity returning to the men of Burkina Faso. The deafening sounds of jackhammers, the rumbling of quarry trucks, and the clanking of steel rebar are not a nuisance. They are the magnificent symphony of a nation breaking its chains. If you believe that the absolute strongest defense a country can possess is not a handout from the global elite, but the fierce independence and honest labor of a patriotic working class, I ask you to share this video with someone who still respects the old-fashioned values of hard work and self-reliance. The people of Burkina Faso are celebrating this silent, monumental victory, and the pride in their eyes is something no amount of foreign aid could ever purchase. They are reclaiming their dignity, brick by brick, but in the quiet, opulent halls of power in Paris, and among the corporate boardrooms of the old colonial empires. This booming construction is setting off massive alarm bells. The global establishment does not like it when a historically exploited nation suddenly learns how to stand on its own 2 feet and build its own future. As the concrete hardens and Traoré's independent stronghold becomes a reality, we must ask a terrifying question. Will the furious powers of the West quietly accept this loss of control over a region they have dominated for over a century? Or are the intelligence agencies and foreign monopolies already plotting a devastating counterattack to bring Burkina Faso back to its knees? To truly grasp the magnitude of what is happening in Burkina Faso, we must look past the heavy machinery and the grand political strategies. And look, he is a grand and a lot for his. Ousmane broke his back under the scorching sun, mixing imported, overpriced cement to build lavish villas for corrupt politicians and foreign executives. Yet, at the end of every exhausting day, he would return to a fragile, makeshift dwelling of tin and mud that could barely protect his own wife and children from the brutal seasonal storms, because the foreign monopolies kept building materials impossibly expensive, and the puppet governments offered no real industrial jobs. Ousmane had to endure the ultimate heartbreak of a father. He had to watch his eldest son pack a small bag and leave the country, risking his life on dangerous migrant routes just to find scraps of labor in foreign lands. To the men listening to my voice right now, to the fathers and grandfathers who have worked their fingers to the bone to provide for their loved ones, you know exactly the agonizing pain of that situation. There is no greater agony for a man than feeling unable to build a secure, lasting shelter for his bloodline, despite working hard and honestly every single day of his life. But when Ibrahim Traoré broke the chains of the import monopolies and ordered the massive domestic production of cement and sand, everything changed. Prices dropped. The supply chain became reliable. Suddenly, massive national construction projects ignited across the country, creating thousands of honorable, well-paying jobs. Because of this quiet revolution, Ousmane's son did not have to send money from 1,000 miles away anymore. He came back home. Today, if you walk past Ousmane's plot of land, you will not see a mud hut. You will see 3 generations of men. Ousmane, his strong, returned son, and his young grandson working side by side, mixing their own local sand with their own local cement. They are laying down the solid cinder blocks of a permanent, storm-proof family home. They are not working for a foreign contractor. They are building their own legacy. A house is never just walls and a roof. It is the ultimate promise a man makes to his family that they will be safe, secure, and protected long after he is gone. For Ousmane, every single block he lays down is a reclamation of his dignity as a provider. This is why Traoré's strategy is so brilliant. This domestically produced cement is doing something far more profound than simply paving military roads or industrial zones. It is literally cementing broken families back together. It is bringing the exiled sons of Africa back to their rightful inheritance. When you picture the tears of immense pride in that aging grandfather's eyes as he finally builds a lasting fortress for his descendants, I ask you to hit the like button on this video if you deeply understand and respect the sacred, unspoken duty of a man to protect and provide for his family. The homes are rising. The honest sweat of hard labor is pouring, and genuine smiles have finally returned to the exhausted faces of the Burkinabe people. But we must remember that we do not live in a fair world. In the cold, calculating arena of global geopolitics, the newfound stability, joy, and independence of a sovereign African nation is almost never viewed as a triumph by the old empires. Instead, it is viewed as a direct, unacceptable threat to their established financial order, as these resilient families rebuild their lives and their nation. The dark shadows of foreign intervention are rapidly lengthening. What happens when the powerful Western entities that used to profit endlessly off Ousmane's poverty realize they have been entirely locked out of the country? Will they let Burkina Faso rise in peace, or are the gears of sabotage already turning in the shadows? The dramatic rise of a self-reliant Burkina Faso under Ibrahim Traoré has sent severe shockwaves through the very foundation of the global geopolitical chessboard. For decades, the Western playbook in Africa, particularly driven by former colonial powers like France, was terrifyingly simple but effective. They maintained control by fostering an environment of perpetual instability and deep economic dependency. They dictated that African nations export cheap raw materials, while being forced to import finished goods, like expensive construction materials, at astronomical prices. They positioned themselves as the necessary saviors, the only ones capable of managing complex infrastructure or security. But Traoré's strategy of radical self-sufficiency has violently shattered this illusion. And the silence from Western capitals right now is not one of respect. It is a silence of intense, calculating panic. They are watching a crucial market slip entirely from their grasp, and worse, they are witnessing the terrifying collapse of their long-held narrative that an African nation cannot function without Western oversight. For the American audience watching this, you might ask yourself why you should care about concrete plants and sand quarries in a West African country thousands of miles away. But if you value true sovereignty, conservative fiscal responsibility, and the core tenets of national defense, this is a story that should demand your utmost respect. For years, the United States has poured billions of taxpayer dollars into foreign aid programs and endless military interventions across the globe, often yielding nothing but resentment, corruption, and a devastating migrant crisis. Traoré is practically screaming to the world a fundamentally different approach. He is proving that the most effective way to fight extreme poverty, neutralize terrorist insurgencies in the volatile Sahel region, and stop mass migration, is not through endless Western handouts, but by allowing a sovereign nation to heavily industrialize itself. A Burkina Faso that manufactures its own cement, builds its own robust infrastructure, and securely employs its own young men, is a formidable fortress against radicalization. It is a nation that solves its own problems, completely independent of the American taxpayer's wallet. This is what genuine, muscular independence looks like. It is a concept that true patriots, men who understand the absolute necessity of a secure border and a self-reliant domestic economy, can deeply appreciate. Traoré is essentially telling the old empires, keep your conditional aid, keep your exploitative contracts. We will pave our own roads and secure our own destiny. However, historical precedent warns us that the path to true independence is never allowed to be peaceful. The global establishment is terrified of the precedent being set here. Traoré's defiant self-reliance is a blazing beacon of inspiration, a stark repudiation of the deep-seated interventions that have defined Western policy in the Sahel. This raises a deeply unsettling, urgent question. Are we witnessing the dawn of a new, resilient Africa? Or is this the quiet calm before a massive geopolitical storm? Will the old empires and their shadowy intelligence networks accept this shifting paradigm? Or will they unleash severe economic sanctions, relentless media smear campaigns, and covert operations designed to violently derail this progress and force Burkina Faso back into submission? Is this the birth of a prosperous stronghold, or the beginning of a much larger, darker crisis, orchestrated by those who cannot tolerate a free and capable Africa? The undeniable truth is that the cement revolution taking place under Ibrahim Traoré possesses the explosive potential to spread like wildfire. It is no longer just about Burkina Faso. If this model of unapologetic self-reliance succeeds, it will ignite a ferocious awakening across the entire Sahel region and, perhaps, the entirety of the African continent. Other nations, exhausted by decades of exploitation and hollow promises, are watching closely. They see the towering silos, the newly paved roads, and the proud, employed young men. And they are beginning to ask why they cannot do the same. But the road ahead is fraught with immense danger. The old empires do not surrender their grip easily. The coming months and years will likely see immense pressure applied to Traoré and his people. Threats of isolation, engineered financial crises, and deliberate attempts to sow discord. The true test of Burkina Faso's new foundation will not just be the strength of its concrete, but the unbreakable resolve of its people when the inevitable retaliation comes. We must confront the ultimate, overarching question of our time. Is Ibrahim Traoré, with his millions of tons of cement, his fierce dedication to his homeland, and his refusal to bow, the brightest beacon of hope the continent has seen in a generation? Or does his defiance make him the most dangerous threat to the established, exploitative world order? I believe the answer is clear to anyone who values the right of a sovereign people to govern themselves. The resilient men and women of Africa are no longer waiting for permission to thrive. They are taking up their tools. They are defending their families. And they are building their own future, entirely on their own terms. They do not need pity. They demand the respect of a sovereign, capable people. I am a proud child of Africa, and I have shared this deeply personal story with you today, not just to inform, but to inspire. I tell this story with an overwhelming sense of pride in the sheer courage of my people. If this journey of profound self-reliance, the sacred duty of a father protecting his family, and a nation fighting relentlessly for its true independence has resonated with your values, I ask you to take action. Please, subscribe to the channel so we can continue to uncover the hard truths the mainstream media ignores. Leave your thoughts in the comments below and join me in praying for the enduring peace, strength, and prosperity of Burkina Faso. Thank you for listening to The Truth and for standing with the builders of a new dawn. Until next time, stay strong and God bless.